All right, today we're talking about a threat to Turkey that is, believe it or not, hiding in plain sight. And to really get our heads around it, we've got to start somewhere else entirely, thousands of kilometers away, with a tragedy that's a chilling, stark warning.
Take a close look at this face. This is 13-year-old Omaira Sanchez. Her story starts back on November 13th, 1985 in Colombia. And what happened to her? Well, it's a direct result of an entire nation that just failed to listen to the warnings.
So the Nevado del Ruiz volcano erupts. And here's the crazy part. It only melted a tiny fraction of the mountain's glaciers. But that was enough. It created something called a lahar, a truly devastating torrent of mud, ash, and debris. Imagine this thing racing down the mountain at up to 100 kilometers an hour. It was basically a silent, fast-moving wall of pure destruction.
And within just a few hours, this lahar slammed into the town of Armero, which was 45 kilometers away from the volcano itself. Omaira's home just collapsed around her. She was trapped in freezing water and rubble for 60 agonizing hours. Her father and aunt, they were killed instantly. And get this, for those 60 hours, she was conscious. She actually spoke to the rescuers. She sang songs. She even told them to go home and get some rest. But the rescue teams, they just didn't have the basic equipment to get her out. She eventually succumbed to her injuries, and her final heartbreaking hours were broadcast to a horrified world.
So you have to ask, right? The really crucial question here isn't just about the volcano itself. It's about the human failure that let this happen. I mean, how could a tragedy on this scale possibly occur when the danger was known and the volcano was a full 50 kilometers away?
Well, the answer to that question, sadly, comes down to one single powerful word: unpreparedness. And we're not just talking about a lack of equipment here. This was a complete systemic failure to take the threat seriously at all.
I mean, look at this. This shows a level of complacency that's just catastrophic. Scientists had actually mapped out the exact risk to Armero, but the authorities, they just dismissed the warnings, called it exaggeration. They said the country had bigger problems to deal with. The local people, they called the volcano the sleeping lion, and they honestly couldn't imagine it ever waking up. And when the disaster finally hit, the rescue teams didn't even have enough shovels. Just shovels.
Okay, so why are we spending all this time on a tragedy in Colombia? It's because this heartbreaking story is a direct, and I mean urgent, lesson for Turkey. The exact same kind of complacency, the same overlooked threat, it's playing out there right now.
When you look at the parallels, they are absolutely chilling. Colombia had one sleeping lion. Turkey, it has dozens of what you could call sleeping giants. And just like Colombia was distracted by other things, Turkey's national focus is almost entirely on earthquakes. And that means this other massive geological risk is being almost completely ignored. All right, let's switch gears from a story about the past to the hard scientific facts of right now, because this isn't some vague, maybe it'll happen possibility. The science is pretty clear. The probability of a volcanic eruption happening in Turkey this century is actually higher than the probability of one not happening. You know, everyone knows Turkey for its earthquakes. It's a huge deal. But its landscape is also dotted with these sleeping giants. And here's the thing. We all learn their names in school, right? But what we don't learn is the very real risk they actually represent. And this is the really crucial point here. Sleeping or dormant does not mean dead. Not at all. These volcanoes are technically active because there are still live magma chambers underneath them. So just like that sleeping lion in Colombia, they can and they will wake up eventually. And if you look at this timeline, you can see these aren't just events from some ancient, forgotten past. We're talking about Mount Ari, Turkey's highest peak, erupting in 1840. And the last official eruption in the country was on Mount Tendureg in 1855. I mean, that's well within modern history. That's not that long ago.
So let's actually put some numbers on this danger, because when you see them, they paint a pretty stark and undeniable picture of why this threat needs our attention, like right now.
Okay, check this out. 15 million. That's how many people in Turkey live within a 100-kilometer radius of an active volcano. So this isn't some remote, abstract threat that only affects a few small villages. No, we're talking about 15 million people, a huge chunk of the population, living right in the potential blast zone. And it gets worse. When you look at global risk analyses, and these don't just look at the volcanoes themselves, they factor in population density and how prepared a country is.
Turkey ranks 14th, 14th in the world for volcanic risk. And a huge reason for that scary high ranking, the level of preparedness is critically, dangerously low. And then there's this number, over 70%. Just let that sink in for a second. That is the statistical probability of a volcanic eruption happening in Turkey before the end of the century. This isn't a question of if anymore, it's a question of when. And for a lot of us watching this, that means it's likely to happen within our lifetimes. Now, it's also important to remember that not all eruptions are created equal. You've got your effusive kind, which have these gentler, slower-moving lava flows. Those give you time to evacuate. But then you have the explosive ones, violent, dramatic bursts of ash and rock. And as you can see right here, some of Turkey's most famous mountains, like Erciyes and Hasan, yeah, they're the explosive kind, the much more dangerous kind. Okay, but here's the good news. This story does not have to end the way Armero's did. This isn't about scaring people, it's about being prepared. And the crucial difference here is that unlike earthquakes, which strike without warning, volcanoes give us signs. Science gives us the tools to prepare. We just have to choose to use them. See, volcanoes almost never erupt out of the blue. Before they blow, the magma moving around underground causes tiny earthquakes. It literally makes the ground swell up by a few centimeters, and it releases specific gases that we can measure. All of these are clear, measurable warning signs that can give us days, weeks, sometimes even months of a heads up. So the solution here isn't about you or me learning individual survival tips. It's much bigger than that. It's about building a national, science-based system for being prepared. That means investing in the scientists and the tech to monitor these giants 24/7. It means creating actual specific evacuation plans for those 15 million people at risk. And it means educating the public so they know what to do. These are the exact things that we're missing in Armero, and they're the only things that can stop a similar tragedy from happening again. So, at the end of the day, the science is crystal clear. The historical lesson from Armero is undeniable. A major disaster is on the horizon, not because it's unavoidable, but because it's being ignored. The volcanoes themselves are giving us plenty of warnings. The only question left is, are we listening?